Hello. Last time we looked at the unit test coverage and we spotted that it was quite low in a couple of places because we didn't have any tests around the Slack webhook. So I've gone in and I've created a new test. So the way I organize my test is I have a folder for each API I'm testing and then I have one class for each test scenario. So the Slack webhook gets called when an administrator in Slack clicks a button to either approve or reject a user joining Project Venimus. So my first test is just approving a user. So it uses a BDD approach, so it's given when then, and it uses this BDD5 framework to do that. So we're saying as an administrator, I want to be able to approve user requests so they can join our community. So normally you'd write the test first. In this case, because I already had the code, I had to read through the code and work out what the code was actually doing. So we were saying that given an unapproved user exists, given the user is a member of a group and the user is attending an event, then when the webhook's called, so Slack calls our webhook back into our application, it then passes in this detail, which is the action, which is approve in this case, the value, which is the user to approve, the name of the user doing the approving, and a unique URL which we can post any information back to. So we call our webhook here. So once that's completed, we then check that the user in our database has actually been updated to be say they are approved and not rejected, that we auditing who actually did the approval, and we also audit the date it took place. We then check that a message is fired back to Slack, so the message in Slack then gets updated to say this user was approved or rejected by a particular person at a particular time. So we just make sure that the message going back looks about right. So we've actually mocked out Slack at this point, so we're not actually talking back to Slack. Then what happens is a message is placed onto a service bus, and when the service bus consumer runs, it does a couple of things. It updates any groups where that user is a member of, and it updates any events which that user is registered for. And the reason it does that is because we've denormalized the user record into both groups and events, so they contain a flag that says whether the user is approved or not. This wait here is because it's an asynchronous process, so we have to actually wait for the consumer to read the message of the service bus. So I wrote that code. Which is quite useful in itself because I noticed there was a bug around the updating event flag, updating the is user approved flag on events. So I fixed that. And then I reran the coverage tool. And as you can see, it was, I think, 81, 82% before. So that's now gone up to 86. And I've generated the report again. And if we look at the report, you can see things are looking a bit better. And in particular, if we look at our Slack web controller, you can see that's now up to 57% coverage. If we zoom in on that, we can see the reason it's not that high yet is because we haven't covered the reject user case, which is this code down here. So it turns out the reject code is actually quite similar to the approved code, other than we're setting the flags the opposite way around, and we build a rejected message rather than an approved message. So what we can quickly do that now, so we can actually copy our existing test. So the action this time is, instead of approve, it's now reject. All the other information is the same, but now we're saying the user is rejected. So the approved flag is now set to false, the rejected flag is now set to true. I'm going to make sure they're not rejected before we start. The message in Slack is updated. So this is interesting because we're not testing whether it says approved or rejected, so we're not going to change that test. The user group's membership is not updated, so that wants to remain as false. So I think we just want to check. So when we send our message to Slack, okay, so the approval message got the word approved in. The rejection message has got the word ejected in, so we probably should add that to our tests. So this is the approval one. And likewise with the rejected one. So we will run our tests now. So we'll run both tests because we've changed our code. So this should just take a couple of seconds to run because it has to wait for the service bus to run as well. Okay, the approval one still works and the reject one is failing. And the reason that's failing is because it doesn't contain the user's bio. And this is because I actually spotted the bug earlier, which is down here. We've got some code, some to-do code, which should have actually been deleted by now, so that can come out. Now we can run our test again. So originally the user's bio was hard-coded because there wasn't a way for the user to enter their details, but we've since added that to the front-end screens. Okay, here we go. Okay, so that's better, so our tests are all passing, so let's save that. So what we can do now is update our coverage again. Unfortunately, that means we've got a slight delay while it all runs. So whilst that's running, we can update GitHub. So you can see because it's generated this file, it would want to commit it, so we need to add this to our git ignore. Okay, so it's no longer trying to add that. It's still running. Okay, so that's now up to 89%. What were we before? 86%, so that's looking much better. Generate our report again. Okay, that's looking a lot better. So our HTTP client extensions. So that's still got quite low coverage, so let's look at that class. Okay, so let's see, actually we've got some methods we shan't use, so we probably should delete those. Make sure everything builds. Okay, whilst that's building, hopefully successfully. So the next problem is that one? Yeah, program itself. Okay, so this is just startup code, which you don't really test. So this is our localization file. Okay, so there's some localized messages which are internal errors So these are really cases which never happen. So for example, we're loading a group from our group store which no longer exists. An element. So this class has got no tests around it at all. So look at that one. So it is used, however. So this is when the original message is generated to be sent to Slack. And I'm wondering whether we don't actually have a test around generating those messages either. But as you can see, things are looking a lot